Hello everyone, Ryan here. Everybody Lies by Seth Stephens-Davidowitz. It's another audiobook I recently listened to, and it's pretty interesting. It's primarily about data, however you choose to say that. Data. So it's about the researching of data, collecting data, and essentially just the author, he, one day, while gathering material for this book, an audiobook, he used Google Analytics in order to determine the different things, like pretty much a lot of different things that have to do with politics and racism, prejudice, other things too, like equal rights, and also sex, primarily, how often, how honest people really are about, when it comes to the amount of sex that they have in a given year. So, in the first couple of chapters, I found it to be mostly interesting because he talks about how he was surprised to discover that, before, during, and after, well, pretty much before and during, when Barack Obama got elected and when he was president, he did some research through Google Analytics in order to try to get a better understanding of, things like racism and prejudice. And what he found was that before Barack Obama was elected, and then after he was elected, there's a pretty high percentage of people, mostly in the southern states, and some other states too, but primarily in the southern states, there was a high percentage of people that, at that time, they Googled a lot of stuff, different memes and jokes and stuff that had to do with making fun of minorities, primarily a lot of making fun of black people, African Americans, and of course, for him, this wasn't too much of a shocker, but later on, after, who was elected. After Trump got elected, he went back and he looked at the data again and realized that the same percentage of people that were looking up these racist memes and stuff in the southern states, it was pretty much the same percentage of people that admitted to voting for Trump, which for me, it came as no shock. I guess for him it kind of did, but then not until he thought about it for a little bit, and then he realized that, it made sense. It mostly, he talked about how it made sense mostly because, Trump got elected because he, not because he was, the best person suited for the job or whatever, which I believe too, but as far as, in this audiobook, what this author talks about, pretty much what the author believes is that what got Trump elected is the fact that this high percentage of people in the southern states who were already racist to begin with, or at least prejudiced in some way. They're the ones who got Trump elected, or at the very least, their votes contributed a lot to getting him elected. Because Trump, he tapped into that racist vein, that racist vein that runs through the southern states. I don't know how else to describe it. Which, obviously, yeah, I knew that. I know a lot of people knew that, but I guess there were still plenty of other people that weren't aware of that. And the author also points out that, because for a while, when Barack Obama was president, people were convinced that racism was on the way out, that racism was dying out, But it turned out that it didn't. It was still alive and well, just kind of in a different form, and not so out in the open. Of course, obviously now it's out in the open. I don't know. I guess it's like the author also kind of points out the fact that there's these different periods throughout history in which racism is out in the open, and then it's not, and then it is, and then it's not, and then it is, and then it's not. And so, I mean, again, for me, it wasn't anything surprising, but I'm still kind of glad that the author brought it up in this audiobook, because he didn't just solely rely on his own personal opinion. He relied on the data that he collected, the research that he did through Google Analytics, and then also the different numbers that he got from different polls that people were a part of, when they were asked who they voted for, or who they liked as a candidate, and all that. So, that's one thing I like a lot about this audiobook is the author. He's not writing from his own personal opinion or perspective. He's relying solely on numbers, because numbers don't lie. Another good example he gives in this, he talks about how the fact that both men and women often lie about the amount of sex that they have. When he compared it to, say, the average number of condoms that are sold in a year, it turns out to be just in the U.S. alone, I want to say something like 400 or 500 million condoms that are sold in a year in the United States alone. And then he compared that to different polls that people have done, where they were asked how many times per week do they have sex, or how many times per month. And he compared those numbers, and they didn't add up. Because he said that, because if the people were telling the truth, and this is both men and women, and both gay and straight men and women, because if they were in fact telling the truth, then the amount of condoms sold in a year would be much higher. He said it would have to be in the billions, but it's not. So because of that, all you have to do is look at the numbers and realize, a lot of these people are lying. Which is another thing too. I kind of was aware of, but to hear the author, or actually it's a different narrator, but actually it took me a little while to get used to the narrator for this, because at first I couldn't tell. I don't know if it was just my phone that was acting weird. At first it sounded like some automated like robotic voice or something. But I don't know. But I mean, in regards to the audiobook, you know, the author is good at pointing out that, you know, numbers don't lie. So, and, so I mean, again, you know, a lot of interesting things that are covered in this book. I will admit there were some parts where I kind of zoned out a bit and I stopped paying attention because it seemed like the same amount of information, same amount of data was just being like rehashed, like just talked about in a slightly different way. And, but other than that, it was definitely very interesting, very intriguing. I'm trying to remember at least one other thing that is mentioned. There's, you know, a section in which he mentions sports and also about computers. No, like say, you know, he talks about the numbers and some polls that people took, you know, where they lied about being tech savvy when really they weren't, and you know, it didn't take much to find out. You know, essentially, the author points out that, yeah, our world, our reality, the reality in which we live in, is not so straightforward as we believe it to be. Which I already knew anyways, but I know there's a lot of people that don't realize that. I mean, either, you know, they intentionally choose not to be aware of that, or, you know, they're just caught up in the everyday life stuff, everyday life stuff that most people usually get caught up in, and, you know, but still, I feel like people should be aware of some of this stuff. The fact that, you know, reality is not as simple as black and white. It's not as simple as yes or no. It's not as simple as up and down, left or right. So, yeah. I mean, as far as the rating goes, I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Definitely. Like I said, I think I would have given it a 5 if, like, there was a different narrator, or at the very least, if there was, like, you know, if it was presented in a different way, or, but I mean, I guess, you know, because it's all about data and, you know, numbers, so I guess, like, if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's worth at least one listen, you know, or one read, you know. So I guess I would recommend it, you know, if you're the kind of person that's into reading about or hearing about, you know, say, like, what percentage of people believe that bananas are better than oranges, or or something like that, you know. Which I believe that there is something like that mentioned in the audiobook. But yeah, otherwise, you know, again, I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. So that'll do for my review of Everybody Lies. And thanks for watching this. Thanks for listening. As always, next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.